Welcome to the Wayne Public Library's virtual author chat. My guest today is CC Bridges. CC Bridges spent her childhood visiting other worlds in books, comics, and the Starship Enterprise. It's no surprise that she ended up a librarian, being surrounded by the books she loves so much. CC writes about amazing worlds with honorable characters. Her hobbies includes paying money to get locked in a room for an hour so she can solve puzzles to escape, along with the aforementioned reading. She has an MFA from Southern New Hampshire University. Welcome, Cece. Please tell us a little more about yourself and your new novel, Better Latte Than Never.
Um, so my name is Cece. I've been writing a very long time. In the bio, I covered the comics. I was a big Marvel movie fan. It's a shame they never made any more of those movies after Endgame. Um, but I also have done over 200 escape rooms. That's our hobby. And I've played video games. I'm a big Final Fantasy 14 fan. For a shout out for everybody who plays that, which is probably not a lot of people. But Better Latte Than Never is my most recent release. It came out in June, and it's about coffee, but it's also about writing and creativity and found family. Um, we have Finn, who is a writer with writer's block, and Enzo, who is a barista, but a wannabe artist, and how they both inspire each other to create better art.
Okay. So you've shared something about the book, the premise. Can you share something that isn't in the blurb, like something about either of the characters?
The blurb doesn't mention that there's a whole cast of characters, and there's a little bit of a rivalry between Enzo's coffee shop and the cannoli shop across the street. And in fact, my creative writing critique group, we were calling it the cannoli book for a while because the cannolis kind of featured throughout as a kind of a little bit of a joke. Um, so it's a little bit of light humor that's surrounding these two characters that I don't know if it's clear in the blurb that it's a little bit of an ensemble because the blurb was very focused on the two main characters and what they're struggling with.
Okay. And will we read anything else about Finn and Enzo? Are you planning on writing anything in the future?
Actually, yes, there'll be a Christmas short story. It's coming out December 1st. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you do get the story for free. Everybody else, it's available wide on Amazon and all local retailers for I think it's $1.99. It's a short story. We get to see them during the Christmas season and see what they've been up to since the end of the novel. So that was really fun to write. And once again, my critique group helped a lot with that.
You've written a bunch of other books. This is just one of many.
Yeah.
What would who would you say, or which character couple in your books would you say is your favorite if you had to pick one?
I can't pick one. That's the problem because I, I do I do have a special place for Finn and Enzo because they're creatives and they're artists and Finn's a writer. I think he's the first writer character I've written, which is funny. So I do have a special place in my heart for them. They're kind of they're cozy characters, right? It's a cozy story. Um, but then I have my disaster characters. I have Hank and Ian in Exodus, which is the second book in the Heaven Corp trilogy. And Hank is just a disaster. He's he was so fun to write because he is arrogant and he has to learn his place a little bit, and Ian is like the straight character, the in the sense that he's the serious one, and they're chaos and a little and so that's really fun to write too in a different way than writing the cozy character. So I'll say I guess both sides of my personality, right? The cozy and the sweet, and then the disasters, the guys who don't have it together, and it's watching them figure it out.
Okay, and those you said your disaster, more
Heroes,
disaster.
I guess.
Okay.
Disaster heroes.
You've written several subgenres. Do you have one in particular that you like to write, and why?
I've written I was thinking about that. I've been writing contemporaries for a while, but I think my heart is still with sci-fi fantasy. And the reason is because I really do like creating worlds and world building. And I think even in Better Latte Than Never, I build a world. I build the world of the cafe. And oh, I didn't mention this earlier. It takes place in Red Bank in New Jersey. And so I'm building I'm trying to draw in people who are not from here to this town, and getting a sense of um, the atmosphere and putting them in it. And it's the same kind of thing then when you write sci-fi and fantasy, only you're putting a lot more work into it. But you have to. I love creating that world, and dropping a character in and seeing how they can navigate themselves through it. And I love spending the time just thinking about the world building. So that's why I do think I want to go back to writing. I'm hoping to write some fantasy. In 2024, that's my goal. Or I might do some more paranormal, or why not both. But I just like that idea of creating those different worlds. I love coming up with new concepts. I have my paranormal, I won't give it away yet, but the paranormal one I want to write has, I think, an interesting concept that um I'm really excited about. And I hope I get the opportunity to do that, because I love the world and the concept.
Could you mention like one of the worlds that you've built? Like, what was one of the settings for like one of your sci-fi
Sure.
novels?
We'll go to the first one, which is the Angel 1089, which all three books have the same setting. It's 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 funny because it's in New Jersey, but it's a floating city above the state. And so there's the contrast between the people who still live on uh, on the earth, and the privileged who live in that city that's floating above the state. Um, so it was, how is it going to work? How are people living below, when the sun is kind of blocked out from the floating city? What kind of culture gets developed? And so that's actually, I guess you can say, it's a hallmark of my writing. There's a bit of found family going on there as well. It's the people who've banded together, who've created community. They've scavenged and they find food and things that are still available. And then the people who live in that privileged above city, who have all the food they could want, but they're very out of, there's like this ennui. They're kind of bored with their lives. And when those two cultures clash, um, also what's interesting is that the people who live in the city above, they have their protectors, their army are angels. They have metal wings, and they're cyborgs. And so the people below, to counter that, have created demons, which are more kind of like Frankenstein creatures. And it's really it's really kind of fun and cool. That whole world. It was just a lot of um fun creating that and putting the characters, like I said, dropping them in the situation, because we've got that overarching story, the overarching world, but I'm really telling the story about the two characters, and one's a fallen angel and one's just a human guy. And they're kind of like, just literally, the angels literally dropped on his doorstep, and how the story progresses from there.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. Really
Yeah, that's
a
like I
unique
said,
version of Jersey. Yes.
yes. Everything, I think almost every book, superhero division takes place in New York City. But I'm from New Jersey, so I try to, like I said, unique takes on it. But I try to, I do that in my stories.
And what piece of your work would you say you're most proud of?
I have different reasons for this. I wrote Escape Room Tango, which is a romance novel about escape rooms. And I'm proud of that because I said that's the book I can let my mom read. Um, and my mom was very proud of it, because it's not not complex like the Heaven books are. And it was putting my hobby into a romance novel. So I'm really proud that I was able to do that. And then I was going to say completing that Heaven Corp trilogy, because it was the first series I wrote. It's the only series I wrote at this point. And doing it the wrong way and starting it without a plan, and having to tie it all together in that third book somehow without the plan. Um, and then I think, and we'll talk about the novel I wrote for my MFA program, because that was 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears. and being able to finish that and complete and get that degree. So I'm proud of them all for different reasons.
Um, I read that you have a Kindle Vella story that you've been
Yeah.
working on, which is called Cauldrons and Cannoli.
Yes.
And it's described as The Soprano meets Charmed.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that story?
So that's actually my MFA novel. So I thought it would do well in Kindle Vella because it's kind of TV-like in the sense of episodes. And it's like this, it's like Charmed because my main character B comes from a family of witches. And she doesn't find that out until well, chapter one. She finds it out in episode one, but she's 21 and she realizes she learns from her grandmother that she's inherited this magical ability. Also in that first chapter, she's always known that her family was connected with the mafia, but her father is the boss, and she realizes that magic and the mafia are intertwined. She finds out by witnessing her grandmother, and this is free online. You could read the first chapter for free. Her grandmother using her magic to punish someone who's betrayed the family. So it's got elements of mafia, like Sopranos, but like the Sopranos, it's very down to earth. Um, but like Charmed, it's also got that magical elements. And also, while this is going on, she's not aware, but the FBI has sent an undercover agent to try to woo her to get in with the family. So she's just learned she's got this magical ability. There's this FBI. In her view, there's this cute guy who's trying to get to know her, but we know he's an FBI agent, and things get pretty intense from there. The novel is complete, so I'm just posting a chapter a week. We're up to, I think, the first 9 chapters. The first 3 are free to read on Kindle Vella. I do plan on publishing it as a standalone book once it's complete on Vella and it has its 60-day run. But I was experimenting with the idea of a serial, so I'm cutting it not necessarily always where the chapters originally ended, but more like if it was a TV show and what's the little cliffhanger, what happened, so you can see what happens next. And I thought I've always wanted to do a serial. And I thought this was a good opportunity to take something that I spent 4 years writing with in my master's program, workshopped by my fellow students and a professor, and um, I think it's the longest thing I've ever written of all my novels. It's about 30,000 words longer than I think my longest novel. So I thought it would do well to break it up like that. But it's also a story about once again New Jersey, because it takes place in New Jersey. But um, it's also grow. It's also a story about growing up Italian in Newark, which is my story. So it's also very family oriented. Once again, what I write is very family. There's family in all my books in different ways, but it's about family versus your blood family versus the family that you make. And
And
I hope it doesn't sound too complicated because I realize I'm making everything sound more complicated
no,
than
not
it
at
is.
all. Not at all. You said you're up to chapter 9 or episode 9. How many episodes do you think it's going to eventually be?
I think 50 because I think it's 43 chapters as it is, but if I cut some of them because they're a little long, so it might be up to 50 episodes
Okay.
on that.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, it definitely sounds fun. Charmed and The Sopranos sounds like an excellent plot. So you've discussed your MFA program, but where did you get inspired to start writing? Were you always writing since you were a kid, or?
Yes, it's funny because I was chatting with my husband and he was joking around that I would say, "Oh, I've always been writing." I'm like, "But it's true. I've always been writing." I was the kid who was at the library all the time. And I was always in different worlds and daydreaming. And I think in 5th grade I wrote a poem and I got a lot of praise from a teacher. And it kind of set me on a path of, wow, I can write something and somebody else would appreciate it. And so even though I didn't really write a novel well, a novel that I would want other people to read until much later. I've always been writing. I'd be in the back of the classroom in high school, writing my stories. And so I've always had that. I think you're going to ask me later about publication, so I won't get into that just yet. But I've always been daydreaming. Books were always a escape for me, and I think wanting to do that, write myself stories that could be escapes for other people would be um, the, my my goal.
How would you describe your author voice?
Sure.
And do you think it applies across the board to all the different genres, or maybe it changes?
I always try to write deeply from the point of view of the characters. And if you in Better Latte Than Never, I hope you can tell when I'm writing from Finn's point of view, his sentences, because he's a writer and he is a literary writer. So his thoughts are like a little bit longer, the sentences, his vocabulary is a little bit more complex. And then Enzo is not a writer, he's an artist. So they're trying to get into his head, how would he sound? And that's my author voice. I've told it's very clear and readable from based on reviews I've read, but I'm always trying to make it sound like the character is the one telling the story. So I kind of try to disappear a little bit when I'm writing.
Okay. And so you just mentioned your characters. So when you're crafting your stories, what comes first, your plot or the characters?
I think I know I start with a scenario. So in Better Latte Than Never, it's like, what if a famous writer got writer's block and then he had to slum it at a cafe to try to get his creativity back. And that was like the premise. And then later on, Finn came as a character, and then I learned things about him as I wrote. So I plot, but then I figure out the character as I go. So I learn things about him as I write. Um, Enzo was a little bit harder to crack than Finn, and I don't know if it's because he's not a writer. Um, but it was just trying to figure out his motivations and things like that. So the plot comes first, but and I develop the characters, and then sometimes you write 30,000 words and you have to go back to the beginning and rewrite because now you figured out who the character is. Now I know what story I'm telling. So a scenario, a plot, and then character.
Oh, so that could lend itself to, as you just said, a lot of editing. Is
Yeah.
there a particular part of the writing process that you find most difficult?
I think it's that second draft because I'm doing that right now in the middle of a second draft and I'm struggling because the first draft is for me, right, as the writer. I'm telling myself the story. And now the second draft is I have to figure out how to tell everybody else the story because I have to other writers will know this. You have stuff in your head but you've not put it on the page. And that second draft you're like, "Oh, I have to explicitly explain why he's like this or why he's saying that." And I know why, but the reader doesn't know why. So it's that struggle with that second draft to make sure I haven't forgotten um, anything and making sure that I'm telling a story that's enjoyable for someone who's not me, for my readers to enjoy.
Um, for you, you mentioned that your MFA is like what you wrote and when you were in school was the longest that
Mhm.
you've written. How long on average does it take you to write one of your books? And do you have a writing routine?
It's funny because I can't I was like, okay, so MFA book took me 4 years. Escape Room Tango. Oh wait, that was 4 years. Oh, Better Latte Than Ever. That was kind of 4 years too. So I don't really want to say it takes me because I was writing them all at the same time. Um, but I'm a thinky writer. I need time to think, and I have to come up. It's every day I take a walk, and on my walk I'm figuring out what's going on in the scene, the book, the story I want to tell. But until I figure something out, so a lot of my writing time is sometimes not writing. It's just staring into space or taking that walk and figuring out what's going on. The book I'm working on right now, I did the rough draft in the zero draft in about 3 or 4 months. So I'm working on the edits now, and I'm hoping to have a second draft by the end of this month. So, and then it's got to go to the editor and things like that. So, then I would say I'm about a year from beginning to end. If I cut out all those trying to do three books at the same time thing. I'm also trying to streamline this a little bit in the future because now that I'm no longer in my MFA program, I'm not also writing papers in addition to writing a novel. And that takes a lot of time out of writing when you've got assignments to write and books to read in addition to writing your novel. So now that I only finished that last August, and it's taken me about a year to kind of decompress from having to do assignments and having to be somewhere. So I'm thinking that as I get my process honed a little bit, it shouldn't take me 4 years to write another book. So
Okay.
um,
And a writing routine, just that. Do you have like special times of the day? Are you a morning writer, an evening, late night?
I like to sprint. So when I have, so what that means is I set a timer and I write as much as I can during that 15-minute window. And then I take a break and I do it again. And it's because I have to fit the writing in between everything else. The day job. Um, I'm also I I run a card making class for senior citizens at a retirement community. I have a 12-year-old son, so it's in between all those, making dinner and all those things. Okay, now I have 15 minutes to get the writing done. And that's why the walks are very helpful because when you've got it in your head, then it's easy to get it down. So I do a lot of writing in the cracks. I have 15 minutes after dinner to sit and write. Um, or everybody's in bed but me, I'll get something done. And so I do like writing at night. I always have. I In the morning, I there's not enough coffee in in the world to get me to write in the morning, unfortunately. It's just not happening. So
And is it like a movie playing in your head when you like go for the walks as you work out the scenes? Does it kind of play out that way or
it yes, it can. Sometimes I'm it's just figuring out, what's going on, but sometimes I do have um the scene. I see the scene, I see the characters. And that's why sometimes getting what I see into words is a little bit challenging because I know what it looks like. I know what happened. Now I have to explain it to everybody else.
do you often hear from your readers and what kind of things do they say?
I've heard on a couple of occasions, and one is funny. One was a librarian who wanted to know why I didn't one of my books wasn't in overdrive, so I was able to fix that for him. That was a problem. Um, One was a reader who wanted a sequel to the superhero division, and I had to let him down and say, I'm sorry, I'm not planning on a sequel to that. And then I think the most cherished, and it's something that's currently published. Someone was reading something I had written while they were in the hospital waiting room, and it was an escape. And I think that's the ultimate goal I have as a writer is to give somebody that moment of escape, that um, to take them out of something horrible happening in their lives, and with my story, and it could give them a little bit of joy. And so I think that was like probably the best letter I've ever gotten from a reader. And I think you said where, but sometimes Goodreads, I have it open for questions, and on Facebook, you can always find me there, and leave me a note.
Okay. So as you mentioned earlier, I am going to get to the publishing part. So what was your publishing journey?
I actually started with some small presses that no longer exist right now, and they were great to give me a chance. Um, I had some short stories published, and then my first novel, which was Angel 1089, was with Sam Hain. And I'll when publishing changed, and I had my son, and I took a little bit of a detour after that because it was hard to write. And there was upheaval, so a lot of those small presses don't exist anymore, and I had to learn quickly how to um, self-publish them myself. But I'm very grateful to the small presses because I got an introduction to the editing process, how publishing worked. Better Latte Than Never was the first thing I self-published from beginning to end that wasn't originally published with a small press. So I was the person who had to make all the decisions. So I hired the editor and the cover artist and did the layout. And I really appreciate the hard work from those small publishers who did all that for me, giving me time just to write and to edit. So it was 2000 and I think 11 where I took that extended break because I had my son. And I think the first thing I wrote after that was a superhero division, which was published by a small press called Musa. Once again, they don't exist any longer. And then I finished the Heaven Corp series after that because I had that extended break. So there's, I think, a difference in Angel 1089 and then those second two books. There's more maturity. I think Angel I wrote with a lot of enthusiasm, but not necessarily skill. And part of learning through publishing and having different editors is refining your voice, refining your process. So I'm always grateful for those opportunities.
Okay. And so when you got the call, the first day
Oh,
you published, which book was it?
well, the first call was a short story. And that I remember I was on, oh, wow, this was back in like 2007. I still have the paper contract because it was on paper back in those days. And I was so excited. And my mother was like next to me. And I'm like, I have to tell you something, but I have to explain what I did. And that was I submitted a story. So she didn't even know that I had submitted the story. And then I explained that they were going to accept it for publication. And with Angel, which was the novel, I had actually, I have to backtrack. Before Angel, there was the same publisher had taken a novella of mine called Beyond Meridian, which I forgot it existed. That's terrible. Because it's not when it's not and that was the first thing Sam Hain took. And that was, I remember I had spent a weekend. I literally my husband. I said go. He went to his friend's house for the weekend to play video games, and this is how long ago this was. This was and I said it's me and the dog, and we're gonna finish this novella because I really want this opportunity. And then when I got the email, I was like, I finally having something that's not a short story being published, and it was every time I got an acceptance, I was jumping up and down. I would get this flush of yes, they like me, they really like me, and it was I felt so much joy and so thrilled to have like I said the opportunity that somebody else liked what I had to say.
Okay. Yeah, exciting. It's always
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
Telling. Um, what is one of the most surprising things that you learned when self-publishing your books?
That I liked being in charge. That I liked, because I always said I liked being with a publisher because I wanted them to do the things I didn't like doing, the admin work. But then when I did the admin work, I enjoyed it because I can make the decisions. Like I did want to mention here, my stuff is on sale right now, and I don't know when you'll post this. If it still is, it'll be on sale until December 1st. I do all my books, and I can make that decision because I've self-published them all, and I can say, all right, everything's half off uh, for Black Friday and Thanksgiving, and who knows, maybe I'll extend it if it goes well. Um, but I don't have to ask a publisher, or I'm not at their mercy of when their sales schedule is. I can see what's working. If I'm going to put ads up, did I sell any copies with ads, or were they completely useless? Like I can immediately see the return on my investment. So it's literally like it's like being a CAO of my own stuff, and it takes a little bit of the magic away, I think, from people see an author as just writing, but now we're business people in addition to writing, and And I think it's the reality right now that we have to be both. And I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. So it's really it's a really good experience.
Um, then I have to ask about writers group and critique partners. You've mentioned some a little early on
Yes.
in the interview,
Yeah.
but how important was it to join a writers group or having critique partners?
Gonna have to wave to them because they're here. So they're in the room right now. I thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. I think it's so important, and I really wish I had them earlier on, um, because it's made a difference in how I feel about writing, how I feel about my writing. Um, and I wish I had spent more time developing the community that I have. I see them every week. And we read each other's work, and and I value their experience and um, their critiques, and I hope I share as much as I get from them as well, because it's been really valuable. And to see other people, because we've got people who are self-published, people who are traditionally published, and we share our experiences, and we learn from it. And there's no judgment or anything like that. It's just very much a friendship, and I really appreciate it.
Okay. Um, and what advice would you give a new writer that's starting out?
A couple of things. One is to find the community. I think that's and it's hard. It's not easy because I've been writing a long time, and I it's taken me a while to find a place. Um, so find the community. But also I wish I had more of a an idea of what I wanted when I started. And I can tell you right now, it's not easy. And I should have decided earlier if I was going to write for publication, if I was going to write just for me, if I was going to write for self-publishing, because there's different things you need to do to reach those goals. And I was kind of like, okay, well, this sounds fun. Let me write this. It sounds interesting. Let me write that. And that's great. And I definitely I don't regret anything I've written because I've learned so much. But I think if I was just starting out, or I was telling a writer who's just starting out, I would say be intentional about your choice. If you're writing this fantasy novel, is it what you're going to want to write? Find the community, have a plan for what you want to do with this. If you want to sell it to a publishing house, if you want to self-publish, just be very intentional about what you do and setting those smart goals and deciding, that's what um, who you want to be. And then it's taken me 20 years to figure out who I am. So I mean, how I'm writing now, what I want to write about and explore is different. So I think even if I had told myself in my 20s, I would have been like, sure. And what I wanted then is different from now. So just whatever you do, be intentional about it. And the community is I think the most important thing is find your tribe, find your people who support you, and people that you can learn from and be mentored by. So what's next is I'm going to be writing. It's written. Why am I? It's been a long day. I'm editing a novel that's coming out in February. It's part of a Summit Springs shared universe. Um, so it all takes place in the same small town. It's also about escape rooms again. So that's definitely it's written. That's what I'm in the middle of editing for. So that'll be out in February. Um, I'm also plotting another escape room book about their escape room podcasters, and they're going to be in an escape bed and breakfast. Um, and there's a little bit of tension between the two of them because they're attracted to each other and they don't want to admit it because they don't want to ruin the podcast. So that's what I'm plotting. The other one is a small town coming home um, after being away for 10 years, and her high school sweetheart is running an escape room, and there's a bit of conflict because it's um, her job is to basically build a rival company, and so it's So it's cozy, like Better Latte Than Never is cozy. So that's the two things that are coming up, and hopefully in the next 6 months.
Okay. Um, there's a couple of questions, comments in the chat. DA is asking, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading two things because I read something on my phone and I'm reading something in print. And the one I'm reading on my phone is it's called something like Sent to a Fantasy World and All the Guys Want Me. Um, it's got a historical title and it's so far it's a joy. And it's literally about a guy he can't get any action in this world and he gets sent to a fantasy world and suddenly he's really popular. And then I'm reading a serious fantasy uh, tome called Empire of Exiles. It's the exact kind of like heavy world building that I'm interested in, and it's so they're very, very disconnected. But I'm reading one at home and I'm reading one at work on my phone. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Okay. VA says, that sounds awesome. My question is, I did some research on you, and I noticed that you really like board games.
Yeah.
So, what is your favorite board game?
And this is the most difficult question that you've asked me because I once again I had to sit with my husband. I'm like, what possibly? Because when I say we have hundreds of games in this house, we have hundreds of games in this house. We go to PAX Unplugged every year, which is a board game convention in Philadelphia. Um, so I actually wrote down like three choices. So one is a game called Space Base, and it's because it's a nice starter game. You know, you can set it up, play it, doesn't take too long. Um, it's a dice rolling game. My son, he started playing it very young, so anything we can all play as a family is good. Then there's a game called Quacks of Quedlinburg, and it's just a fun game. You're supposed when it's a quack, they're not ducks. They're quacks like they're potion makers, and you're it's just fun because you're pulling out tokens and you're trying to make your potion and it's really silly and fun. And then Everdell is really, really complex. It's like a two-level board that you have to play your little woodland creatures trying to prepare for the winter. And it's really cute and it's really complex. So I went from the simplest to the most complex. So we're not playing Clue here. We're not playing Monopoly. Although my son is a big Monopoly fan. We own 4 different versions of Monopoly. But we're talking about like these games that take like hours to play. And so we have a lot of them. And I'm sitting here usually I'm usually in my basement, but I'm in my guest room and I've got games in here that we haven't found homes yet for. Um, oh, so one of the games we recently started playing is called Unmatched, and you play a character through history or literature, and you're like, well, what if Sinbad the sailor fought this is not apparent. There's no. I was gonna say Xena Warrior Princess, but I don't think Xena is in here. But some Black Widow from Marvel could be in there, and it's really a lot of fun. And that's really short game, and I think anybody could play that. I wouldn't recommend Everdell for your average game player, but I think your average game player can pick up Unmatched and have a good time with it.
Then I am going to say thank you so much to Cece. So, better latte than never. I
Yeah.
got it right. Good luck with that and with the holiday develop.
Oh, it's blurred. Sorry.
Yeah, nope, latte than never. And good luck with all the other projects that you mentioned
Thank you.
during the interview. We look forward to reading them.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight.